What'd you learn about being in a long distance relationship?
Hey y'all, it's LG. Today we're going to be talking about long distance relationships, or LDRs for short. My partner and I have been together for 5 years, 2 of those years being long distance from California to New York. Today, he will join us to share and reflect on that experience. Let's give a warm welcome to Gabe. Hello.
Hi.
Well, I want to share this experience on long distance relationship because it's easy to develop feelings for someone and all that love stuff, but it's just very difficult to have to go through the maintenance process. So shout out to anyone that has previously been in a long distance relationship or is currently in one. We empathize with you. We met at a mutual friend's grad party. I heard of Gabe. I didn't really know him personally. My first impression of him was that I heard that he was going to law school. That was of interest. In passing, our mutual friend told me, go talk to him. And I was like, why am I gonna try to get me to talk to him? That turned into going beyond a summer fling, and honestly the rest is history.
I guess it's kind of interesting that we met at that party because in hindsight, talking to people looking back, there's probably 1,000 other places that we should have met beforehand. I didn't know that we both interned at the same little tiny company for a while. We had a lot of mutual friends. I think it's fortunate because I think if we had met any other place, I know personally I wasn't in a space to have met you and cared very much. I was very scatterbrained and I just wasn't in a place to make new friends yet. So
well,
I think
fair.
it was fortunate that we met under the conditions that we did. Kind of from the very beginning, because when you and I met, we were living in separate cities. It wasn't easy for us to hang out. Anytime we would hang out, it would require a trip, basically. So in that sense, it's always been a long distance relationship. But I think once you moved to New York, it became a very long distance relationship.
Yeah, it was a longer distance relationship.
Yeah. So now you start incorporating the time difference and flights and all that stuff.
So if you watched my first video, I did mention that I ended up moving to New York. But what happened in terms of our relationship was that the timeline for actually moving was 2 weeks. Gabe and I didn't really even have conversations about what that reality would look like. It was very rushed in the sense of what the hell are we going to do? What I feel like compounded that situation was that we were both going to school at the same time and we were both working. I think we weren't even in the right state of mind to be talking about it and trying to plan our futures at the same time.
Also, when we were confronted with the reality that we would be entering into a long distance relationship together, we were unsure of what we were doing or how we were going to go about this. It was kind of a catalyst for us to have conversations that we hadn't had about our relationship prior to that. What does the future look like? How are we going to manage this? We're both really busy. How are we going to sacrifice and compromise with one another? So it kind of opened the door for a lot of conversations that had yet to be had between us two.
Yeah. I realized I had a lot of alone time. I didn't realize that I would become extremely lonely. I didn't realize what a toll it would take on me emotionally and physically when it came to trying to maintain the relationship. One of those things would be our FaceTime dates. Having to schedule those things was helpful in the way that we knew that we would talk to each other every day, but it was just really bland. Just didn't make our relationship fun. We didn't have a lot to work with. And long distance relationships are expensive, especially when you're across the country. We realized that we should get credit cards that rack up miles and help us get points because we would be flying every 4 to 6 weeks. That was a hassle.
Yes.
Okay, what about you?
Well, I think the primary one is when you're communicating over FaceTime or the phone, it's inherently going to become monotonous because your only interaction with your partner is a lot of times through some technology device. And most of the time you see your partner on a screen or through a speaker. And there's only so much that you can do to communicate what's going on in your life through a device. it severely limits the tools that you two have at your disposal to communicate and share with one another. Especially when your own life feels really monotonous. You're doing the same thing every day, going to the same places every day, or talking about the same things every day. The relationship begins to feel like a big blur. It's hard to tell Tuesday apart from Thursday, apart from Saturday. So that's really hard. For us, because we were on opposite sides of the country, we had a 3-hour time difference, and I think that made it difficult for us to figure out when and how to schedule things. I tend to study better when it's really late at night. I know there would be times when I'd be like working on something for finals or whatever, and I'd be up really late, and I would know that, oh, I'm up past the time Lauren is getting up from work. And that was just crazy to process, because it's like, man, how are we gonna maintain this relationship when we're just living on completely different schedules? It's also hard to make new memories. I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that we're both living these really intense, busy schedules on our own. You can share a bunch of the stuff that you've done, but it just doesn't stick the same as you experiencing things together. I can tell you, oh, I went to this new restaurant, they have an awesome chili dog, but you're not gonna remember that in 3 weeks because you didn't have any chili dogs. But if I take you to the chili dog spot, we're gonna remember going there for a longer time. And then I guess the final thing is, it's really easy to fall into a lack of spontaneity because we have to be diligent about the way that we're scheduling things and the way that we're communicating with one another to compromise and respect each other's schedule, but still cut out time for us to communicate. Nothing tends to surprise you anymore. I know that, oh, when I get off work, I'm gonna call Lauren. We're gonna talk about our days, and that'll take 30 minutes. Out of that 30 minutes, we'll both run out of things to talk about, and then you're just kind of grasping at the air for things to bring up. So it's really hard to be spontaneous and in the moment and get out of the rigid schedule that you two have carved out together, because that's what you're relying on for structure in the relationship.
I learned how to ask really hard questions like, is this relationship worth going through all of this trouble? Or is this the person that I really want to make my life partner? These were really good questions to ask in terms of knowing, is this worth doing? What did you learn?
The things that are inherent in any relationship, you know, the time commitment, the sacrifice, the compromise, all those things get magnified in a long distance relationship. And you're gonna have to go through a lot more to get to the same place that you would if you weren't in a long distance relationship. And I guess I had to ask myself a very real question: are you willing to pay that toll in order to try to make things work? And it's risky, just like anything in life. The universe doesn't owe you anything. Even if you do everything right, as you should, and there's nothing that you could have done better, sometimes things just don't work out. And that's okay. And that's a reality that you have to be willing to stare in the face and accept.
It's a risky investment.
Also, speaking of it as an investment, the same as it takes a lot more for you to put into the long distance relationship, I almost feel that in certain situations, it helps you get more out.
How so?
Well, you miss the person more.
Sure.
So when you see the person, it means a little bit more than when you saw them last Tuesday. If you're waiting weeks, months, years to see your partner, it's gonna mean a lot more when you see them. Also, when you two are able to pull yourself out of a tough spot in your relationship, I think being able to do that as a long distance couple makes the lessons you learn, they solidify a little faster, or they mean a little bit more because it just feels like there's so much more on the line.
For me, it was having my own personal space. I was able to move to New York. I wanted to adjust to my living situation. I had my own apartment, which was pretty awesome. And I had the opportunity to reflect on my accomplishments at this point.
As far as positives, I think I alluded to it earlier, but it gives you an opportunity to miss your partner more. I think when you guys see each other regularly, like let's say you see each other every day, right? You leave for work or whatever, and then you come back, it's like, oh, I missed you so much, da-da-da. But when you don't see your partner for days, weeks, months, years at a time, you really miss your partner. And that's a level of longing that you can't develop when you see each other regularly. And I think that is an important ingredient when you are developing an appreciation for your partner. You know, they say absence makes the heart grow fonder. I think it's true, especially in long distance relationships. Oh, being in a long distance relationship is inherently uncomfortable. It's not fun. There's a reason why people try to avoid them. But the silver lining to that is that it forces you to be uncomfortable and to share that uncomfort with your partner. Us being long distance for as long as we were and having to work through a lot of things together, it forced us to practice being uncomfortable with one another. And where that puts us now is when we have uncomfortable conversations that we have to have, I think we're better equipped to do them, not only because we practice, but we also understand what that uncomfort means for ourselves and what that uncomfort means for our partner. So it helps us adjust and tailor the way we approach problems now better than we were before we went through that experience.
Yeah, going through the uncomfortable conversations, like I know that we've had conversations on the phone where it was just like, hang up, and having to like play telephone tag because shit just hit the fan. But I feel like knowing that we went through those experiences and tried to like be better about the way that we were communicating with one another, it's just the fact that the distance makes this so frustrating.
And I guess the other positive to being in a long distance relationship, at least for us, is because we were both at a time where we were very career focused and we're both in school and both just trying to carve our own paths. Not having the distraction of a nearby partner all the time really allowed, I think, both of us to fall down these rabbit holes where all we're focused on is improving this one thing or working on this project or trying to strive to this goal. And at those times, feeling lonely wasn't always the worst thing. There was just one less distraction I had to ignore and block out while I was focused on doing X, Y, or Z. The other side of that is when I wasn't focused on those things, I felt really lonely. But in those moments that required hyper attention and focus, I was able to give that a lot easier than I think I would have if we were seeing each other every day.
I think it was important in that we were focused on investing in ourselves, focusing on what it is that we want to do. Obviously, in your case, you're trying to get through school. For me, it's just trying to find my way through my UX world. We were able to allocate that time to ourselves. Considering couples therapy. Therapy is good. You can try it. I think that was really important for us, at least when our long distance relationship ended. When Gabe came here to stay in New York, and we did have some unresolved issues that we weren't really able to parse through. It's just difficult sometimes when you're both trying to communicate different sides of your stories. There's truth in both of it, but we just needed someone to facilitate that conversation and help us better understand what's a good starting point, or equip us with the actual tools that we need in order for us to feel heard and move forward, or try and think of better ways of communicating with each other. Any parting words from you?
Number one, I think it's important that you and your partner have an open and honest, brutally honest conversation about the long distance relationship. Why are you doing it? What's the plan? How are you going to move forward? Because if you two are not on the same footing, it's going to be hard going forward. You two are going to have different expectations, and those expectations aren't going to clear themselves up. It takes a lot of communication work between both of you to make sure that you see eye to eye on those things. And then once you have a common understanding, you two develop a schedule, some sort of structure to your relationship, because it's not going to be intuitive. It's let's figure out what we're going to do in a week, a month, a year. Once you have those things, like how often are we going to talk? What are the mediums that we're going to use to communicate?
We scheduled stuff on Google Calendar.
Yeah, and that might just be a function of me and Lauren being really busy at that time in our lives. But whatever you and your partner's individual lives look like, you two need to sit down at some point and really figure out, okay, what are we going to sacrifice? What are non-negotiables for both of us? And how are we going to try our best to make those two things work? So definitely having some sort of framework, not only for when you communicate, but how you communicate.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that we did early on was we tried to figure out each other's love languages. And I think what that did for us, it did two things. Number one, it helped us understand what we're looking from our partners, what we're internally expecting our partner to do to express love and affection. And on the other side of that, it also helped us translate our partner's actions and see them through the context and lens of their love language. I think there's a book by Gary Chapman who kind of lays it out. It's a really short read. It's worth it. It gives you a scheme to kind of look at things and forces you to think. It's like, why am I doing X, Y, and Z? Why would my partner be doing X, Y, and Z? And instead of superimposing your expectations of what you think love and affection look like, it helps you look at things from a different perspective. And having a common framework to work through those problems, it helped us work out things on common ground rather than coming at them from completely different and opposite angles.
I just looked up my love languages again, and I think it's acts of service and words of affirmation. What were yours?
Quality time and touch, which are very hard to do when you're in a long-distance relationship. So we had to figure out ways of circumventing our obstacles to make sure that we're both hitting the key points that both of us want from each other.
I think another thing is also giving each other the benefit of the doubt. We struggled a lot with that, thinking that the other person was just really ill-intentioned when they were trying to actually try really hard to do something that was nice or kind. And we would have times where we just argue over like petty things. Maybe I was the one probably making bigger problems out of smaller things. But Gabe would always remind me, we're in this together, cut him some slack. We both should be doing that because we have to do this from afar. It's not just a relationship at that point, it's more of a partnership where we're really trying to work together and be a team. So I'm glad that you always would remind me of those things.
You're welcome. And then I think one of the keys to making a relationship work with your partner is you have to make sure that your insecurities are lower than your level of trust. There should be less insecurity than there is trust. If you have it the other way, that's a bad recipe for everyone. If you're more insecure than you are trusting of your partner, no one's going to be happy. You're going to be thinking that your partner's up to the worst thing in the world, and you're not going to be able to sleep because you don't trust them. And then when you express that to your partner, they're going to feel that lack of trust, and they're going to feel like you're betraying them because they didn't do anything. It's like, what are you so upset about? And having those conversations when those things are out of balance is going to lead to a recipe for disaster. So you have to work diligently with your partner to make sure that, number one, that you're open and honest about your insecurities with one another. You can't blame your partner for doing something that you didn't communicate to them. Understanding what those insecurities are and building trust and just having those open and honest, uncomfortable conversations about what is going on and how you're going to work together to fix it.
Yeah, that one's really hard. Like, I was already like going through therapy periodically just for myself, just to try and work through some of my own problems. And after some of those sessions, it would be like the first time telling you, and I would feel so anxious about sharing that with you. Being able to also communicate how you want the other partner to receive information that you might not feel comfortable disclosing sometimes, I think is a very valuable thing to discuss with one another. Thank you for listening and going on a journey with us through our long-distance relationship escapade,
Rendezvous,
fiasco,
adventure.
Just because we're together doesn't mean that the learning doesn't end. So thanks, Gabe, for joining. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're so eloquent. He's so eloquent. Well, anyway, y'all, we'll catch you later.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Oh my god.
Okay. I didn't tell you what I'm thankful for yet.
I'm thankful for you too.
Okay.